Hello and welcome. We're about to dive into the interpretation and application of the new ICH E6R3 guideline for good clinical practice. Now, if you're involved in any part of a clinical trial, from planning and kicking things off all the way to analysis and reporting, then you are absolutely in the right place. Let's jump right in.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to cover 5 main areas. We'll kick things off with a quick intro to ICH and GCP. Then we'll get into why this big E6R3 revision even happened. After that, we'll look at the new guideline structure, talk about the core quality concepts behind it all, and wrap up with a summary and a peek at what's coming up next.
Okay, first things first, let's build our foundation. In this section, we're going to get right to the core purpose and definition of good clinical practice.
So let's start with the most important question of all, right? What is good clinical practice? Okay, so at its heart, GCP is the gold standard for clinical trials. It's not just about one part. It covers the whole shebang, from planning and running the trial to analyzing and reporting on it. But here's the key thing to remember. It has 2 main jobs. First, to make sure the data we collect is solid and reliable. And second, and this is absolutely critical, to protect the rights, safety, and well-being of the people participating in the trial. And that ICH part of ICH GCP, well, that stands for the International Council for Harmonization. Think of them as the group that gets everyone on the same page. Their whole mission is to create one unified standard so that clinical trial data from, say, Europe is accepted in the US, and vice versa. It's what makes global drug development actually work. All right, now let's get to the main event, the E6R3 revision. To really understand why this update was so needed, let's hear from a couple of the experts who were right at the center of it all. First up, we have Haier El-Zarad from the FDA. He was the rapporteur for E6R3, and he calls this revision a significant cultural shift. And what he means by that is the new guideline is all about concepts like quality by design, basically focusing our resources on what really, truly matters, keeping participants safe and making sure the results are reliable. And adding to that, we have Peter Toomey from the European Medicines Agency. He makes another great point. With technology and trial designs changing so fast, the old GCP guideline just wasn't keeping up. He emphasizes that this new revision is built to be flexible, to adapt to all kinds of modern trials, like ones with decentralized parts or ones using real-world data. So that's the why, but how does all this new thinking actually look on paper? Let's break down the new structure of the E6R3 guideline. The whole thing is now organized into 3 main parts. It's pretty straightforward. First, you have 11 foundational principles that are the bedrock for any trial. Then there are 2 annexes that show you how to apply those principles. And finally, 3 appendices that get into the details of key documents and records. Let's zoom in on those annexes for a second. Annex 1 is kind of the main event. It covers your traditional clinical trials and lays out who's responsible for what. But Annex 2, that's the new and really exciting part. It's what gives the guideline its flexibility, with specific advice for modern trials that use things like decentralized tech or real-world data. And as for the appendices, there are 3 of them, and they're all about the essential paperwork. Appendix A is for the investigator's brochure. That's the deep dive on the product being tested. Appendix B is all about the clinical trial protocol, and Appendix C deals with essential records. Now, I really want to call out a major change here in Appendix C. The old GCP had this super long, rigid checklist of documents you had to have. E6R3 completely scraps that. It says, hey, the records you need depend on the trial you're running. It's a much smarter, more flexible, risk-based way of thinking. Okay, so this new flexibility we're talking about, it's not random. It's all based on a set of core quality concepts that are literally woven into the fabric of the entire guideline. So let's explore that guiding philosophy. The big idea here is something called quality by design. And really, it's a simple concept. It's about being proactive. Instead of waiting for problems to pop up and then fixing them, you anticipate the risks ahead of time and you build quality into the trial right from the start. The whole point is to prevent errors before they can ever happen. But to make that work, you have to know what to focus on, and that's where critical to quality factors come in. These are the parts of your trial, could be data, a process, a system, that are non-negotiable. They are absolutely essential for protecting participants and getting reliable results. To put it simply, these are the things you have to get right no matter what. The guideline also talks a lot about being fit for purpose. This just means that the tools you use, your methods, your systems, your data, have to be right for the job. It's common sense, right? You wouldn't use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. So the way you oversee a really complex, high-risk trial is going to look totally different from how you'd manage a simple, low-risk one.
And that leads perfectly into our last concept, risk proportionality. This ties everything together. It means you tailor your effort, your money, your time, all of it, to the risks that actually matter the most. And which risks are those? The ones that could impact those critical to quality factors we just talked about. This way, you're not wasting energy. You're focusing your attention where it will make the biggest difference. Whew, we've covered a lot of ground. So let's take a moment to quickly summarize the key takeaways from this module. So by now, you should feel pretty comfortable answering these three big questions. What exactly is GCP? How is the new guideline structured? And what are those big ideas driving this whole revision? So let's recap one last time. GCP. It's the standard for protecting participants and getting reliable data. The new structure, it's all about those principles, annexes, and appendices. And the core concepts, it's all driven by that proactive idea of quality by design, focusing on what's critical to quality. And that's it for this introductory module. Thank you so much for joining me. In our next session, we're going to do a deep dive into those 11 foundational principles of the ICH GCP guideline. I look forward to seeing you there.